It's the beginning of spring. Few things are in flower, but we can still find some things. For example, this fallen group of flowers from the red maple. Here we have a developing leaf of the yellow-trout lily, Erythronium americanum. These should all be covering the forest floors in a few weeks with yellow flowers that look lily-like. The mosses are creating sporophytes, such as this woodsy thyme moss and atricum. And we're going to look for the skunk cabbage. Among the invasive watercress and the developing jewelweed, we'll have some yellow flowers which become ubiquitous in New York City parks at this time of the year, late March, early April. This is Ficaria burna, the lesser celandine. I've also heard this being called the false marsh marigold, as it seems to have replaced our native marsh marigold. Which is very similar, but as always, when it comes to natives versus invasive species, our native marsh marigold, it's actually much more impressive than this one. This is a type of ranunculus, or buttercup. Yes. If you're familiar with what buttercups look like, this should not be a problem for you. There's the multi-pistillate carpel. And the kidney-shaped leaves, which you'll often find in Ranunculaceae, though not always. This family of plants commonly has at least 5 petals / sepals, which are indistinguishable, and many stamens. And if we take a close look at the carpels, we'll see that the carpels are composed of many pistils in aggregate. Calatrike, commonly known as starwort, it's one of the common aquatic plants that grows submerged or emerged. This is a nice mound that's growing very much so above the water line, but never too far. Among the red maples, the Phragmites, and Rosa multiflora, which is popping up, in any wetland that you have in New York City, at least in the Northeast, and surely much more extensively than that, you'll have the skunk cabbage popping up. There's a golf ball. You'll have the skunk cabbage poking up in these rosettes, these large leaves. very common and much appreciated native plant. And here we have skunk cabbage developing its first leaves of the season. Were you to come here when the flowers are in full bloom at anthesis, you'll be able to smell them from far away, hence the name skunk cabbage. It smells a little skunky. It does. The leaves, if you crush them, will also smell skunky. Flowers are definitely pollinated by flies and midges. Things of that sort. It's an aroid in the Araceae family. What you're looking at here is a spathe, and the flowers are on a club-like structure inside, club-like stalk called the spadix. Here I found one that's been ripped up by something, but it's offering us a view of the inside. They're developing fruit, maybe a hexagonal pattern there. And here's one that seems to be attracting all sorts of insects and other arthropods. I like to think of this plant as one of the last flowers of the season, which hangs around to the end of the season and all the way to the beginning of the year and into the spring. The flowers are famous for producing their own heat, and so when all of this water is actually solid ice, you'll see little pockets of holes with these little flowers sticking out. The spadix will produce heat at a very high metabolic rate, I believe, that is more or less equivalent to or possibly even higher than that of a hummingbird. And so it literally melts through the ice and attracts any arthropods that may be flying in the middle of the winter. And here's another invasive, probably one of the most, if not the most invasive of our plants in the New York City area, at least. Garlic mustard. Again, in the Brassicaceae, definitely has reniform leaves, kidney shape, and deeply edged veins. You can always recognize it. If you crush it, it smells like garlic. In this rather loud environment, there is a new kid on the block, and if you didn't know any better, you'd say, oh, what a pretty spring plant. It's green with white little flowers on top. Sure, why not? Included in the spring plant list, right? Well, it's a new invasive, Momenhoffa alliacea. They keep changing the scientific name on it. Also known as Penny-cress or roadside penny-cress. And the roadside part of it is very important because this tends to be spread along highways, along the sides of highways and other roads, as we are here. Let's get a closer look. It's got 4 petals, which tells you right away that it's in the Brassicaceae. Well, the 4 petals are usually in the form of a cross. It does, let me see if it has a smell. It does smell garlicky, for sure. Oniony and garlicky, much like they do in this family. So as if the garlic mustard wasn't enough, we have this one to contend with as well.